People have been asking me to cover the lore behind the Fundamental Paper Education series, so in this video, I'll share the information I was able to gather thus far and my theories for what's happening in this world. So as of right now, there's only one episode in this series, which is one of the main reasons people are so surprised by the fandom that has emerged from the animation. Even more so because all of the characters are OCs, or aka original characters. So the creator of this animation, whose name is Katie, has accomplished something that is just a pipe dream for many small animators. Now when this animation starts, we're introduced to the protagonist of the series, who is named Claire, or at least I think she's the protagonist, even though she bites the dust by the end of the animation. Now in her backstory, we learn that she is technically a new student at this school, which is called the Paper School. And I don't know who she ticked off to get sent to this place, but it seems like a bit of a harsh environment for some 15-year-olds. And I know there is some confusion around the ages of a lot of the characters here, but this looks like a high school, so I think it's safe to assume that most of them are like teenagers for the most part. As you can see in the animation, she seems to be a good student who is hardworking. The first issue arises though when we see these three students bullying her, and those being Zip, Edward, and Oliver. And from my understanding, these three are like the teacher's favorite students, which may not seem like a big deal at first, because when you think about it, we all know, or maybe some of you have been teachers' pets before. And being a teacher myself, I've had students that kind of fell into that role. But this animation takes it to a whole nother level. And this is when we are truly introduced to Miss Circle. And if you are like me, you were probably not expecting her to be a murderous monster. But as she chases down a student named Abby, it became clear that she is after blood. And when she catches him, she gets just that. But she even takes it one step closer and she eats the young man after beating him to death. And this all happened because he failed a test. And I'm pretty sure this guy is only around 15 or 16 years old, which makes his death very tragic. Now while Abby was getting chased, a character named Lana saw him and decided to follow, and actually witnessed Miss Circle devour him. Or I guess more accurately, take a bite out of him. And while we don't get to see until later in the animation, Miss Circle also takes out Lana as well. And something that a lot of people didn't notice is that Lana has two sock puppets on her hand, and since we know that the creator of this series is a fan of the Baldi's Basics series, I think it's safe to say that Lana's character is a reference to a character called Arts and Crafters from the Baldi series.
What the freak is that? Oh, it's a sock. Hey, what the freak?
Now before I move on, I want to give a few facts about Miss Circle. The first being that she is 38 years old and also has the ability to change her size, although her height in the animation is 9 feet 7 inches. And for all the people that are wondering why all the kids are kind of simping for this grown, very tall woman, I would like to direct you to another big girl that the internet simped for. Does this lady look familiar to you?
You ungrateful, selfish wretch! You come into my house!
And I'm sure you all remember this scene.
This right here is my favorite thing ever in the history of forever.
Another fact about Miss Circle is that the weapon that she uses is called a compass. If any of you are taking geometry class, you are probably familiar with this tool. And it makes sense that she would be using it considering that she is the math teacher. I also found it kind of funny that she has a set of classroom rules, but half of them are ridiculous. One even says no breathing in her class. The one piece of good news though is that she apparently loves Oreos, so if kids give her some of those, maybe that'll keep her from ripping them apart. Now after that scene, we see Miss Circle walking with two other teachers. The teachers with the ABC blocks on her head is named Miss Davil, and as I'm sure you've already guessed, she is the language teacher at the school. And the teacher on the other side is named Miss Bloomy, and she is the science teacher, which is why she has that scalpel in her hand, or for her hand. And as far as we know, Miss Bloomy is around 36 years old, while Miss Davil is 35 years old. And just like Miss Circle, these teachers are also murderers, but they don't seem to have the ability to change their height like Miss Circle does. In the next scene, we see the students are in like a PE class, and they are all around the pool. And this is the first time that the school actually looks somewhat peaceful. The worst thing that happens is like the bullies are actually splashing some people. There are also a few minor characters here that pop up. The first one being Ruby, who is this humanoid figure with like a TV for a head. And funny enough, it kind of gives me like Skibbity Toilet vibes. But as far as we know about this character is that she is like a peacekeeper who just wants all the students to get along. This guy right here that has the bendy haircut is named Skell, and he is described as being kind of an introvert, which is probably why he's sitting away from the other students. I also find it interesting that the name Skell actually means to be like a tramp or homeless. So maybe this kid just isn't an introvert, but actually is just homeless and is struggling with that. Something else that I found interesting about this character particularly is that he's one of the only ones that I saw that has a tail and also has wings. So I'm curious to see if he has a bigger role in later episodes. Next, we see two people sitting by the pool. The first one being a rabbit girl named Petunia, and her friend is named Lizzie. And these two are considered to be like the popular girls at the school who come off as nice, but if you kind of tick them off, they do have a mean streak. This is also the second time that we've seen this student here named Ingle, who even now seems like a nice kid, but towards the end of the animation, he really proves that he's a good person. We also see this character here who is named Bubble, and if I'm being honest, I have no idea what she is. She almost looks like she's made out of bubbles or like soap foam. And when I saw the stars in her eyes, I thought this was like the creator trying to show us that maybe she has a crush on Ingle. But then when I looked at her actual character sprite, it seems like this is how she looks all the time. So maybe it's just her design. And the last character that I want to point out in the pool scene here is going to be this little guy on the boat. Apparently this is Zip's little brother, and it's kind of cool to see that even though Zip is a bully, she seems to like her brother and even takes time to hang out with him and play with him at school. So while I still don't think that she's a good character, I suppose that she isn't a complete monster. In the next scene, we see the kids in the library, and this is where we see Claire and Ingle start to become good friends. And just to point out, I don't think that these two are in love or anything like that. When I was looking at Katie's Twitter, it seems like she doesn't really like shipping of her OCs, especially Alice, but I guess that doesn't mean that shipping won't occur later. But as a fandom, we should really keep that in mind because we've seen how shipping can go from being kind of cute to just being weird. We all remember ships like Mordecai x Rigby, or if we really want to get weird, the Pinecest ship, which is basically shipping two twins. So please, let's not go down that route. Now, back in the animation, we see that the bullies recognize that Claire and Ingle are getting closer, and they hate that for whatever reason. So they go get a drone that is capable of picking up people and do just that to Claire, dropping her into a hole that just happens to be in the school, I guess. And this is where the animation really starts to get interesting, because we see Zip go to the door that says Alice's room, do not enter. And when we get to peek inside, we see that Alice seems to be some kind of demon or monster with red eyes and long claws that she drags across the wall. During this scene, we also see Miss Circle say that students should not open Alice's door, and judging by how Alice looks, I think it's safe to assume that she is catching bodies if you go into her room or if you open that door in general. Now, eventually, Claire does fall back into the library, and she is making her way down the hall when she's approached by Miss Bloomy, who has her latest test results, and it's an F, of course. Which doesn't surprise me. I believe that Miss Bloomy makes her work super complicated so that kids can't understand it and that they will fail. We can see it right here on her actual board. Now, I'm not a science teacher, obviously, but this looks like some very complicated stuff for some 15-year-olds. So I think this was Miss Bloomy's excuse to actually chase Claire down, just like Miss Circle did to Abby. Now, one thing that I found interesting is that Claire does manage to lose Miss Bloom for a moment when she hides in the lockers, but she comes out almost immediately. I feel like if it was me, I would have just hid there and waited out the day, but who knows. Now, unfortunately for Claire, it seems like all three teachers came after her at the same time, basically ensuring that she would not be able to escape. But this does seem a bit fishy to me. Claire seemed like she was a really good student, and it seemed unlikely that she failed 3 classes. I feel like the teachers are just out to get her at this point, but I'll come back to this later in the video. Now, after more running and trying to avoid the teachers, Miss Bloomy does manage to actually cut Claire's leg, which causes her to trip. And right when Miss Circle is going to deal the fatal blow, Ingle comes up to save the day, basically grabbing Miss Circle's weapon and giving Claire time to escape, but not without taking a bit of a beating himself. Something that I found interesting here is that Ingle seems to have the same clawed hands as the teachers, making me believe that at least some of these characters are the same species. It just seems like some of them are evil and cannibalistic, while others like Ingle are more kind and docile. In the next scene, we see that Claire sees a door that has an exit sign on it, but if you remember from earlier, the door actually belongs to Alice and shouldn't be opened. And I suppose since Claire is new to the school, she was unaware of Alice's door, which is why she fell for such an obvious trick. But we know the situation is bad because even the teachers looked a bit panicked by what was happening. Now, when Claire gets back into the room, she seems to think that she is safe because she starts to take a breather. And this is when we see Alice in the background looking absolutely pissed. I also noticed that she's wearing a crown or a tiara, which is interesting because in a lot of the artwork floating around and in the wiki, she is called Princess Alice, which leads me to believe that she is the one actually pulling the strings at this school, even though she's supposed to only be around 20 years old or so. This also lines up with the fact that Katie said that Alice is not a student and never was a student at Paper's school, meaning that she is not like the rest of these kids here. Well, except for Oliver, who apparently is the same age as Alice and also is not a student, which means that he's just a grown man bullying a bunch of teenagers. Now, back in the animation, we see that Alice starts to attack Claire, and there really is no contest here. And as Alice is chasing Claire down, we see that she has the power to change her form, teleport, and she even has multiple tails or tendrils coming out of her body. And when she finally corners Claire, she literally rips her apart, which is kind of a surprise to me. I thought that these creatures were taking out kids so that they could eat them or at least eat parts of them, but it seemed like Alice just wanted to send a message to people to stay out of her room. And when looking at Miss Circle's victim, it seems like she also just mangled the students more than eating them whole. So maybe the whole purpose here is just to torment and rip these students apart, which just seems odd to me. In the next scene, we see Ingle get back to his feet, surrounded by 2 teachers and the principal. The teacher with the black hair being named Miss Emily, who is the history teacher. The man here with the musical note on his shirt is named Mr. Demi, and he of course is the music teacher. And the woman in the middle is Miss Grace, who is the school principal. And surprisingly, all 3 of these characters are nice to their students, for the most part, and the principal actually wants to improve the school. So it seems like not every adult here actually hates their students, which explains why these 3 look so distressed when they see Claire's body. Now in this situation, I especially felt bad for Ingle since he's the one that actually tried to save Claire. And if I'm being honest, I was also surprised to see Claire die here because she popped up in a few of Katie's animation. One that you guys may have actually seen is called Why Are You Blinking So Much? The video was a reference to the song called Red Flags and was also like a popular meme trend for a while. Claire also popped up in a few other animations. I know Machine Girl is one, and the other one is called Therefore You and Me. But if I remember correctly, she doesn't die in any of those other ones, so I don't have a lot of faith in the fact that Claire may be coming back or may be revived. I think she's toast for good. Now, the final part of this animation shows Zip and Oliver taking an exit sign off Alice's door, confirming that they are the ones that set up Claire. And the teachers don't seem to be happy about this, which is a big deal because the bullies are their favorite students. This means that messing with Alice is definitely taboo and possibly dangerous for students and teachers alike. My theory as of now is that Alice is obviously the leader, and as long as the students and teachers don't bother her, she'll let them do whatever they want for the most part. And some of these teachers are bad apples that are taking advantage of this fact and using their students as personal punching bags and snacks. I say this because when you look at the things that the teachers are teaching, it either seems way too hard or baby level. We see that with Miss Bloomy's crazy equations here, but then on the flip side, Miss Dabble is just teaching students how to say hello in different languages. So basically, the teachers are using students failing as a way to justify treating them poorly, when in reality, the students are failing because they have bad teachers. And I'm sure everybody here has had a teacher that was so bad that it was almost impossible to pass their class. Any teacher can make a kid fail if they explain an assignment poorly enough, or if they're just bad at their job. With that being said, let me know down in the comments who's your favorite character in the series so far, and thanks to the people who actually recommended this animation. It was a lot better than I thought it would be, so I was pleasantly surprised. Make sure to recommend more stuff like this in the future and check out this video on the screen here. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow with another one. Peace.